Coast, Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, what a lady, what a night. Did you see Jersey Boys?
I certainly did. God, I loved it.
It was good, wasn't it?
Oh, I would see it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I saw it in London. And what a great place to see it in those, theatre districts over there. Yeah.
No, we've only seen it in QPAC, but it was fabulous.
Yeah, and the people can't see it, of course, but the tearing on those old theatres is just like 45 degrees.
We saw Phantom of the Opera, and Jason's got, my hubby, he's got this thing about having the perfect seat. So anytime we can, we will have centre, middle, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, we had borrowed someone else's phone when we were in London seeing Phantom of the Opera, and we had the perfect seat. It was exactly about halfway up. It was sort of middle. Jay's phone went off in the middle of that poignant song. Oh, anyway, it was very embarrassing. Oh my gosh, I was going, I don't know him. It took him like 10 seconds to get his hand down the bottom. He thought it, anyway.
Anyway, those things happen.
Yes.
Yeah, where were we?
Yes, so trauma and that sort of thing. So how do we start to, because it's easy to, no, it's not easy. Sorry, I was going to say it's easy to change our diet. It's easy to change our lifestyle. Those things are much easier than changing our stress, is what I was sort of thinking there. So because if you are someone with anxiety, panic attacks, post-traumatic stress, how do you actually get to the point where that isn't impacting on your genetic expression so that you're not going down the disease format? Because so many people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, they have this history. They know that, and quite often it's after a few sessions, or if they're brave, they tell us first off. But it's amazing how many people, by the time they're on the table, for example, having kinesiology or counselling or Reiki or something, or even with their massage therapist, and these stories start coming out because it's almost like the nervous system knows they need to tell it, it needs to be validated, it needs to be okay that they didn't do anything wrong. And that's part of the process, because when we've been abused or traumatized or stressed or bullied, part of that nervous system believes we're the one in the wrong.
And the body reacts to that.
And the body reacts to that. So it goes into this constant fight and flight. These glucocorticoids, stress hormones, are just pumping through the system all day long, and they don't stop. And this is what we often find with clients. They're saying, look, my life is good. I've got a good marriage. My kids are great. I've got a good job. But they know they suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, and they think, well, where did it come from? And a lot of the time, it's not them. This is where it can come down through the genes from the mother, the grandmother, the great-grand, and fathers as well. Obviously, genes are, DNA is 50%. So there's often somewhere going back through this it's up to 7 generations is what is suspected that we store in our DNA to deal with stress. So that's pretty massive.
How does the normal people? Because there's no such thing as really normal people are all the same. The people that don't have any stress in their life, have never been traumatised. Are they free of all this, or?
Well, some of them, they often don't understand it.
Yeah.
People who have been free of that sort of stuff, I simply think they don't, because I often see them. They come in with their wives or their mother or their children, and they don't get how it feels in the body when you're under that stress all the time. And many people simply stop talking to their loved ones about it because they don't want to admit how exhausting it is to be thinking about these stressors all the time, whereas the partners are less likely to do it.
Well, because people don't want to be thinking that you're just whinging again.
That's right. Whereas people need to have a support of some sort. And I think it is fantastic, particularly on things like Facebook these days. There's a lot of groups out there, fibromyalgia support groups and chronic fatigue support groups and autoimmune paleo support groups. So there's support groups for everything, and it's about getting out there and starting to talk so you don't feel so alone, because that's part of the problem. We've chatted about this before. Loneliness is one of the biggest things that impacts on our health as we get older. Mm. And there was a study done of 20,000 people in America, and it was only released about 6 months ago, but it looked at loneliness as being almost worse than diet and worse than lack of exercise to impact negatively on your health.
Very much so.
So it's quite an interesting thing that this sort of thing is, they're researching this because they know how it's impacting on our aged populations.
Yeah. Well, I think it's most important for the people who are in there maybe approaching their 70s or in their 70s. There's sort of you're not going to go backwards. It's always going to go forwards up to the 80s, 90s, whatever. And you've really got to be involved in some sort of activity where you do have people to go and talk to.
That's right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you go there for a whinge. but to be involved in something.
Yeah, and finding people who are like-minded and fun, so finding, because support groups can be a bit negative if they're the wrong ones for you. But if there's someone who really just understands that, hey, I've got a relative in aged care with dementia, having someone who's going through that exact same thing with you can feel really, it can feel much less lonely going through that process. Because let's face it, if you've got a partner who you've been best friends with for 30, 40, 50 years and all of a sudden
They're gone.
There's dementia and they can easily live another 5, 10, 15 years with dementia. Like there's like this chasm between what your life was and what your life is now. And there has to be a process of making it work for you so that you still live your life, so that you can get through it without depression, you can get through it without anxiety. But I don't think it's easy to do alone.
Oh, no, definitely not. And sometimes people find it difficult to go and join some sort of society, and leaving that person, if they're with that person, who's got dementia, they really need to be looked after. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Unless they've got family help, so they can get away and have a bit of a break. So that's another problem in itself.
It is. Yeah. And so many clients come to me with almost like carer's fatigue. So there's a real specific syndrome out there with people who don't put someone into care when they should. So they spend years spending 24 hours a day taking care of that person. And once again, it's exceptionally exhausting on the nervous system. So I think part of what the epigenetics sort of research shows is that you've got to have support. That's really been quite huge. And I think this is where it's a shame that people, I'm not particularly a religious person, but I think this is the sort of thing where church groups and, it's a shame that people are pulling away from that sort of thing these days more so, because I think that is like the perfect environment. So finding something similar to that in some sort of regular get-together where you've got your friends, you've got people who sort of ask how you are each week.
Yeah, well, so back in my days when I was young, my mum never drove a car, and all she could do was have cups of teas with a few neighbours here and there. There was, unless you went to the library or something, but it's totally different now. A lot of the elderly women, or say women in their 70s, 60s and 70s, have got their own vehicles. They can get out and be involved.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Whether it be bowls or, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Golf or,
and it's finding something, isn't it? It's finding a group who is like-minded and fun. I think fun's got to be in there. I think I might have mentioned it last year. Last week I saw a thing on Facebook where there's in the UK they're starting aged discos. So you have to be 60 or over to go along, and they're just having all these old rockers coming in and singing along, and a lot of the people, like they had people doing little spiels outside, going, "Oh my God, this has just changed my life." Yeah. Something, because they don't feel, they can't go to a normal nightclub.
Exactly.
You just feel out of water.
Well,
so
into a nightclub. But maybe an over 60s one they would.
Yeah, so it's sort of quite fascinating. I love it that this sort of thing is, getting out. Well, that's in the UK, of course, but maybe we need to do something here.
Well, we've got our local Donald Simpson Centre, and they're always looking for people for musicals and for their plays and for acting.
Yes.
And people can find this, in their 60s and 70s. They think, oh no, I can't sing, I can't dance. But they go there and they get encouraged and find they can sing, they can dance, and they can act, and they become part of that. And that's another great outlet, and sometimes it can be a lot of fun.
It can be.
That's just one outlet. There's heaps of others.
Yeah.
Heaps of others.
What do you call it? A thespian?
Thespian.
I'm a thespian.
Are you a thespian?
I am a thespian. I'm in a play at the moment that'll be on in July.
My daughter's in. She's the same. She's a real little actress and thespian, yeah. Which one are you in?
Mercury Theatre in Wynnum.
Oh, okay.
So this play's called The Traveller's Table. It's a cheeky, naughty little half-hour play.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be a lot of fun, yeah.
Just a bit of silliness.
Yeah, and I've done a bit of acting myself over, especially acting the fool. I'm good at that. All right, now, before we head for a little break, we'll wrap that little section up.
So basically I think, because the big research coming out at the moment is about how trauma and stress impacts not only on us for our future, but also on our offsprings. So I think it's about, once again, starting to talk. If someone in your family is talking to you about stress or abuse, how often do you get someone in the family? I hear this all the time where family members have not believed them. So therefore, why do you talk about something when the people who you love and care for, who should love and care for you, just say, I don't believe that happened? Might have been, so I think really starting to open our hearts and minds to listen to people in the family who are trying to tell us something, because quite often you're their lifeline, you know, and it's hard to say something. It's hard to say something. And yes, they're probably going to their GP and chatting away to them about this sort of thing, and probably even going to counselling, or at least this is what people should be doing if this is something that's impacting on your life now. If you've had a trauma and each time you think about it, you get palpitations or you get teary or you get a physical pain in your body, it's still in there impacting on you. Yeah. And I think that is the really big thing. If you think about your childhood and you think, well, I can't remember my childhood, and you go, why can't you remember your childhood? Because most people should have lots of memories, but if the memories aren't there, you sort of think, well, why is your brain protecting you from remembering that childhood?
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? Good point.
So it's sort of, I think that counselling goes a long way. Yeah. And don't feel like it's a waste of time. If you go to a counsellor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they say to you, well, what was your relationship with your mother life? And a lot of people go, what's that got to do with me having anxiety at this stage? But honestly, the stuff from our childhood impacts us throughout our entire life.
They're always advocating, you know, people like Beyond Blue, talk.
Yes.
Please talk.
Yeah.
Like they say men don't talk as what women do. You know, men don't sort of let their secrets out, and therefore there's a high percentage rate of suicide amongst men than there is women.
Yeah.
But yeah, get out and talk about it.
Yeah.
Please,
Stop being macho.
Yeah, if you're listening and you've got something getting up your nose, get over it by talking to someone.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, we're going to take a short break, Madonna. We'll be back pretty soon. This is Bay FM. We're talking to Madonna Guy. It's 22 minutes to midday.
Hi, this is Graham from